Heidi by Johanna Spyri. Chapter 8 Surprises for the Children. Narrated by Tanvi Gupta. Till now, we saw how Heidi finds it very difficult and different in Frankfurt versus the life in mountains that she had in Diofle. Let's see what's in surprise for her, how she manages, and what's in store for Clara and Heidi in case Miss Rottenmeier happens to find out the kittens which they have been hiding. Come, let's explore. The tutor had just been shown into the study on the following morning when there came a very loud ring at the bell. Sebastian opened the door and there stood a ragged little boy carrying a hand organ on his back. "What's the meaning of this?" said Sebastian angrily. "I'll teach you to ring bells like that. What do you want here?" "I want to see Clara," the boy answered. "You good-for-nothing little rascal, can't you be polite enough to say Miss Clara? What do you want with her?" continued Sebastian roughly. "She owes me 10 cents, explained the boy. "You must be out of your mind. And how do you know that any young lady of that name lives here?" "She owes me 5 for showing her the way there and 5 for showing her the way back." "The young lady never goes out, cannot even walk. Be off and get back to where you came from before I have to help you along." But the boy was not to be frightened away and said in a determined voice, "But I saw her in the street and ye can describe her to you. She has short, curly black hair and black eyes and wears a brown dress and does not talk quite like we do." "Oh," thought Sebastian, laughing to himself. "The little miss has evidently been up to more mischief." Then, drawing the boy inside, he said aloud, "I understand now. Come with me and wait outside the door till I tell you to go in. Be sure you begin playing your organ the instant you get inside the room. The lady is very fond of music." Sebastian knocked at the study door and a voice said, "Come in." "There's a boy outside who says he must speak to Miss Clara herself," Sebastian announced. Clara was delighted at such an extraordinary and unexpected message. "Let him come in at once," replied Clara. The boy had already made his way inside the room, and according to Sebastian's directions, immediately began to play his organ. Miss Rottenmeier, hearing the music, rushed into the room and saw the ragged boy turning away at his organ in the most energetic manner. Leave off, at once," she screamed. But her voice was drowned by the music. She was making a dash for the boy when she saw something on the ground crawling towards her feet, a dreadful dark object, a tortoise. At this sight, she jumped higher than she had for many long years before, shrieking with all her might, "Sebastian! Sebastian! Take them all out! Boy and animal, get them away at once!" she commanded him. Sebastian pulled the boy away. The latter, having quickly caught up his tortoise, and when he had got him outside, he put something into his hand. "There is the 10 cents from Miss Clara and another 10 cents for the music. You did it all quite right." And with that, he shut the front door upon him. Quietness reigned again in the study, and lessons began once more. Miss Rottenmeier now stayed in the study in order to prevent any further dreadful goings on. But soon another knock came to the door, and Sebastian again stepped in. This time to say that someone had bought a large basket with orders that was to be given 2 once to Miss Clara. "For me?" said Clara in astonishment. her curiosity very much excited. "Bring in it at once, that I may see what it is like." Sebastian carried in a large covered basket and retired. "I think the lessons had better be finished first before the basket is unpacked," said Miss Rottenmeier. Clara could not conceive what was in it, and cast longing glances towards it. In the middle of one of her declensions, she suddenly broke off and said to the tutor, "May not I just give one peep inside to see what in it before I go on? On some considerations, I am for it, on others against it," he began in answer. "For it, on the ground that if your whole attention is directed to the basket—" But the speech remained unfinished. The cover of the basket was loose, and at this moment, 1, 2, 3, and then 2 more kittens came suddenly tumbling onto the floor and racing about the room in every direction. They jumped over the tutor's boots, climbed up Miss Rottenmeier's dress, rolled about her feet, sprang up onto Clara's couch, scratching, scrambling, meowing. Clara kept on exclaiming, "Oh, the dear little things, how pretty they are! Look, Heidi, at this one! Look at one over there!" And Heidi, in her delight, kept running after them, first one corner and then into the other. The tutor stood up by the table, not knowing what to do. Miss Rottenmeier was unable to speak at first, so overcome was she with horror, and she did not dare rise from her chair for fear that all the dreadful little animals should jump upon her at once. At last she found voice to call loudly, "Tinette! Tinette! Sebastian! Sebastian!" They came in answer to her summons and gathered up the kittens. By degrees, they got them all inside the basket again and then carried them off to put with the other 2. When Miss Rottenmeier learned that Heidi was to blame for having the kittens brought into the house, she was very angry and said, "Adelaide, you little barbarian, you shall be put in a dark cellar with the rats and black beetles." Heidi listened in silence and surprise to her sentence, for she had never seen a cellar such as now described. The place known at her grandfather's as the cellar, where the fresh cheeses and the new milk were kept, was a pleasant and inviting place. Neither did she know at all what rats and black beetles were like. But now, Clara disrupted in great distress. No, Miss Rottenmeier, you must wait till Papa comes. He has written to say that he will soon be home, and then I will tell him everything, and he will say what is to be done with Heidi." Miss Rottenmeier could not do anything against this superior authority, especially as the father was really expected very shortly. She rose and said with some displeasure, "As you will, Clara, but I too shall have something to say to Mr. Zezeman." And with that she left the room. 2 days now went by without further disturbance. Miss Rottenmeier, however, could not recover her equanimity. She was perpetually reminded by Heidi's presence of the deception that had been played upon her, and it seemed to her that ever since the child had come into the house, everything has been topsy-turvy, and she could not bring things into proper order again. Clara had grown much more cheerful. She no longer found time hang heavy during the lesson hours, for Heidi was continually making a diversion of some kind or the other. She jumbled all her letters up together and seemed quite unable to learn them. And when the tutor tried to draw her attention to their different shapes and to help her by showing her that this was like a little horn or that like a little bird's bill, she would suddenly exclaim in a joyful voice, "That is a goat! That is a bird of prey!" For the tutor's description suggested all kinds of pictures to her mind, but left her still incapable of the alphabet. In the later afternoon, Heidi always sat with Clara. and told her of the mountain and of her life upon it, and the longing to return would become so overpowering that she always finished with the words, "Now I must go home. Tomorrow I must really go." But Clara would try to quiet her and tell Heidi that she must wait till her father returned, and then they would see what was to be done. After dinner, Heidi had to sit alone in her room for a couple of hours, for she understood now that she might not run about outside at Frankfurt as she did on the mountain. So she did not attempt it. At times she could hardly contain herself for the longing to be back home again. She remembered that Dete had told her that she could go home whenever she liked. So it came about one day that Heidi felt she could not bear it any longer. She tied all the rolls up in her red shawl, put on her straw hat, and went downstairs. But just as she reached the hall door, she met Miss Rottenmeier, just returning from a walk, which put a stop to Heidi's journey. "What have you dressed yourself like that for?" exclaimed Miss Rottenmeier. "What do you mean by this? Have I not strictly forbidden you to go running about in the streets? And here you are ready to start off again, and going out looking like a beggar?" "I was not going to run about. I was going home," said Heidi, frightened. "What are you talking about? Going home? What would Mr. Zezeman say if he knew? And what is the matter with this house? I should like to know. Have you ever in your life before had such a house to live in, such a table, or so many to wait upon you? Have you?" "No," replied Heidi. "I shouldn't think not, indeed," continued the exasperated lady. "You are an ungrateful little thing to be always thinking of what naughty things you can do next." Then Heidi's feelings got the better of her, and she poured forth her trouble. "Indeed, I only want to go home, for if I stay so long away, Snowflake will begin crying again, and grandmother is waiting for me, and Greenfinch will get beaten because I'm not there to give Peter any cheese, and I can never hear how the sun rays good night to the mountains. And if the great bird were to fly over Frankfurt, he would croak louder than ever about people huddling all together and teaching each other bad things, and not going to live upon the rocks, where it is so much better. Heaven have mercy on us, the child is out of her mind," cried Miss Rottenmeier, and she turned and went quietly up the steps. "Go and bring that unhappy little creature in at once," she ordered Sebastian. "What, are you in trouble again?" said Sebastian in a pleasant voice, as he led Heidi back up the stairs. He tried to cheer her up by telling her he was taking good care of all the kittens, but she was too sad to care and silently crept away to her room. At supper that evening, she sat without moving or eating. All she did was to hastily hide her roll in a pocket. Next day, Miss Rottenmeier made up her mind that she would supplement Heidi's clothing with various garments from Clara's wardrobe so as to give her a decent appearance when Mr. Zezeman returned. She confided her intention to Clara, who was quite willing to give up any number of dresses and hats to Heidi. So the lady went upstairs to overhaul the child's belongings and see what was to be kept and what thrown away. She returned, however, in the course of a few minutes with an expression of horror upon her face. "What is this, Adelaide, that I find in your wardrobe?" she exclaimed. "I have never heard of anyone doing such a thing before. In a cupboard meant for clothes, Adelaide, what do I see at the bottom but a heap of rolls? Will you believe it, Clara? Bread in a wardrobe, a whole pile of bread." "Tinette, she called. "Go upstairs and take away all those rolls out of Adelaide's cupboard and the old straw hat on the table." "No, no," screamed Heidi. "I must keep the hat, and the rolls are for grandfather." And she was rushing to stop Tinette when Miss Rottenmeier caught hold of her. "You will stop here, and all that bread and rubbish shall be taken to the place they belong to," she said in a determined tone as she kept her hand on the child to prevent her running forward. Heidi flung herself down on Clara's couch and broke into a wild fit of weeping, sobbing out at intervals. "Now grandfather's bread is all gone. They were all for grandfather, and now they are taken away, and grandfather won't have one." And she wept as if her heart would break. She could not get over her sobs for a long time. She would never have been able to leave off crying at all if it had not been for Clara's promise that she should have fresh new rolls to take to grandmother when the time came for her to go home. When Heidi got into bed that night, she found her old straw hat lying under the counterpane. She snatched it up with delight and made it out of shape, still in her joy, and then, after wrapping a handkerchief round it, she stuck it in a corner of the cupboard as back far as she could. It was Sebastian who had hidden it there for her. He had been in the dining room when Tinette was called, and had heard all that went on with the child and the latter's loud weeping. So he followed Tinette, and when she came out of Heidi's room carrying the rolls and the hat, he caught at the hat and said, "I will see to this whole thing." The end.